Hello everyone, and welcome to Essential Techniques for Guitar Players. In this class, we're going to explore 5 techniques that are really important for all guitar players. Now the great thing about techniques is you don't have to play a specific style to benefit from learning these, right? It doesn't matter if you play metal or classical or jazz or singer-songwriter or folk. All of these techniques are going to apply to the fretboard, really just give you more creativity, more ease of playing, and really just enhance your experience, increasing speed, dexterity, and overall technique on the guitar. Now to get the most out of this class, I recommend taking at least 30 minutes a day to make sure that you're really practicing these skills. This will ensure that you get the most benefit out of all of this work. So grab your guitar and let's get started. Bending is one of the most essential skills as a guitar player, mainly because it's a very unique technique to the guitar, right? Other instruments can't bend and do vibrato and do all these fun sounds like the guitar can. Now you're probably familiar with the idea of bending. I want to show you a couple tips and tricks to really help hone in and gain more control over your guitar. So for the first example, let's start in E minor pentatonic. And we're going to start here on the B string, 15th fret, and we're going to bend up a whole step, which would be the same note as the 12th fret on the high E string. Now, a couple mechanics to look at here. Normally when we bend, a lot of people will use their pinky, a lot of people will use their second finger, or maybe just their first finger, and a lot of times it ends up sounding like, and it falls and there's all these issues, right? What I recommend is always give yourself the maximum amount of control. And with control, we need support. So the way I would usually approach a bend such as this is I'm going to make my main finger here, my ring finger, and instead of just using all the muscle I have in my one ring finger to bend up, I'm going to use my middle and pointer finger to help support that. So really what's happening is my middle and my pointer here are basically down at the 13th and 14th fret, but I'm really using those fingers as extra muscle to help me get up to that bend. So, I'm displacing the effort of one finger across 3 fingers now, which one, makes the bend feel a lot easier, especially if you have higher gauge or thicker, heavier strings. And 2, it gives you a lot more control to utilize things such as vibrato. Now, one more tip when you're bending is sometimes I'll anchor my thumb around the back just to give me a little bit more of a balanced feel when I am bending, right? It's kind of nice to, your hand naturally kind of wants to not make a fist per se, but your hand in its natural state, right? If you just rest your hand, it kind of wants to go, your fingers want to go towards your thumb. So naturally that will feel good. By all means, if you would rather have your thumb on the back of the neck, you can also bend like that just fine. But in sense of control, the thumb over is going to give you a little bit more control. So now that we have the bend, a couple things I want to look at is how to make sure we're playing the bend in tune. And there's 2 ways we're going to do this. One is we're going to bend the note up, hold it there, and then we're going to check our math by playing the 12th fret of the high E string. And if it's out of tune, it'll sound pretty obvious, right? So you want to find that perfect unison. And if you want to do it as an exercise, maybe just to get the feel right, I'll go up, bending until they sound identical. Now, the important thing here is you want to learn the tension on your guitar. So when you are practicing bending, try to practice on just one guitar. The point being here is I know this guitar so well that I could pre-bend and I could basically play a perfect E note here. And I only know that because I've played this guitar for so long, right? If I were to switch to a Strat or a Telecaster right now, the scale length is different. Everything's going to feel a little bit different. So just as a pro tip, when you're practicing working out your bending, try to stick to one guitar, really get to know it well. So you can always check your math again by playing whatever string you're bending up to, just to make sure you're checking your note there to make sure it's accurate. Another way to really quiz yourself is what I call pre-bending, which I'm going to just bend the note up without playing it and then attack it and check my math. And it should be perfectly right. That's a really good way to get your bends in tune. Now, one last technique with bending is vibrato. Now, we're all familiar with vibrato from, anything that we play on our pentatonic scale or any licks or solos we might know, right? And the idea of vibrato on a normal string is we play the note And we basically wiggle and jiggle it, right? We're basically in slow motion, right? Moving it up and down away from the original pitch to give it that vocal-like feel. Now, if you try to do that on a normal bend, it can kind of get away from you, right? So the secret here into doing bending vibrato properly, you want to use the natural tension of the string, right? When I bend a note up, it wants to go back to its original position. It wants to literally come out from my fingers and go back to where it came from, right? So when I'm doing vibrato on a bend, I'm bending up, and then all I'm doing is I'm releasing a little bit of that tension, bringing it back up, releasing a little, bringing it back up. So I'm not doing the same motion as traditional, right, vibrato where we're really jiggling the string. I'm simply bending it up and then releasing the tension, pulling it back up, releasing the tension, bringing it back up. And again, you can really get expressive with vibrato. You could go crazy, crazy fast vibrato, really slow, very controlled. So vibrato is a really personal touch, so just discover your own, what feels good for you, and roll with it. So for a fun exercise here with bending, we're going to go back to that same E minor pentatonic scale. We're going to start on the G string, 14th fret, and instead of just right away bending up a whole step and back down, I want you to move in half step increments. So we're going to move from the 14th fret, half step bend, whole step, and then the same way, half step back down, half step back down. So we're going to bend up a half step, whole step, and then back down. So it should sound like you're going, but we're going to bend that, and that's going to give you a really good exercise on control. And again, you can take this to any other string as well to really get into that exercise.